A very good evening to all our viewers and welcome to this week's edition of The Agenda. My name is Toibon Jebela, your host. Tonight on the show we are very excited to be joined by Dr. Alfredo Hengari. He is the press secretary in the presidency, as well as Tileni Mongudhi, whom people have started calling a veteran journalist now. He's been around for a long time and he is a journalist writing mostly for the Namibian and other international publications. And we are here to talk about the relationship between the media and the state, the issues of accountability, and so forth. Gentlemen, thank you very much for making time.
No, it's a pleasure for me to be here with you.
Wonderful. Veteran journalist, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. You make me feel old when you say that.
Yeah, no, apparently you deserve it. So, okay, Doc, I'll start with you. I want you to give me a sense of your perception of the Namibian media in general and the role that it ought to play. I'm asking this question because you've issued a number of communiques in the past couple of days in which you take aim at some of the reporting of the media. If you can give me a sense of how you see the media in the country.
Well, I think the state of the media in the country is not without its own challenges.
Yeah.
But it's also important to say that generally, as a country, we have done very well in as far as freedom of the press is concerned.
Yeah.
We are ranked quite highly globally. We are 18 out of 180 countries.
Yes.
When you look at the Reporters Without Borders Index, which is the authoritative index on press freedom. And in Africa, we are number 2. And not because, we experienced any setbacks in the past year and so on. It's just because Seychelles did exceptionally well. And we, on our part, we improved on that ranking. So there is a clear commitment to press freedom on the part of the Namibian government, and that is demonstrated in those types of ranking. But as I've said, the press is not without its own challenges. It's not perfect. So there is a lot of room for improvement in as far as the quality of journalism is concerned.
Tileni, if you can give me, maybe if I can throw the same question to you, what you think is the role of the media, especially in the context of his relationship with the state?
Well, the basic concept is that as a media we serve to inform, educate, and entertain. And we are known as a fourth estate for a reason, so that we can play that watchdog role on all the other pillars of state, whether it's the executive branch, the judiciary, and the legislative branch, and other important stakeholders or societal players in any country. Now, we also have that role to hold power to account, unfortunately.
Yep.
And it's a massive responsibility, especially in Namibia, where the only sort of legislative backing you have is more from the Constitution. Yes, it's supreme, but there's nothing else apart from the Constitution saying that you are allowed to express yourself, and the Constitution guarantees freedom of the media or the press, and that's it. So it makes it difficult to compel people like Dr. Hengari here to talk to us and communicate with us. But the key issue for me is just that since we find ourselves here, we have a role to play. The government has a role to play. So we might as well find common ground. And by common ground, I'm not saying that we will be friends at all times. I'm not saying that we are only going to publish or broadcast only things that the state feels are worth publishing or are okay, whereas we feel that maybe we need to. So that's not going to be there. It's going to be a back and forth. But I just feel that we do need to be cordial and understand that we are each other's stakeholders.
Do you feel that there's a cordial relationship right now between, particularly between the media and Dr. Hengari's office, or the President's office, through Dr. Hengari?
You know, this is a very difficult question to answer, because you see, when President Geingob came into office in 2015, he came in with guarantees and pronouncements of he will support the media, he believes in transparency and all of this. But then you down the line, as we speak today, we find ourselves with a situation where we feel that sometimes his press office is the worst in the history of, at least from when I started practicing as a journalist. I mean, you even had people like Kwaita Shanyangana who were in that position, who were filling that role as more or less like press secretary, or not, with a different title. And we find them to be a bit more accessible. And sometimes, even though we felt that they were limited in some of the questions and the scope or the things that we wanted them to discuss with us, we felt there were some limitations. But there was a sense of accessibility and a sense of understanding that we are each other's stakeholders. And this is the difficulty we've been having with President Geingob's administration, is that it's always when it's easier, it's always easier when it's the presidency announcing something, or when whatever needs to be communicated appears to be making the president appear good in public. But when we are having difficult questions, and this is unfortunately part of the process, when you are running a government, you will have to answer difficult questions. And that's where the wheels fall off. That's where the office of the president then become very hostile and antagonistic. I mean, just 2 years ago or so, the president announced that at the Swapo event, if I'm not mistaken, that the colleagues from the Namibian, one of the journalists, is harassing his children. They want this and they want that. And I'm saying, but the president has a press office, there's a press secretary who should by now have a rapport with all the media houses and all the journalists in the country, especially the ones who deal with political issues. And then we get to the bottom of who was it? Was this person a real journalist? Was it? And if they say they come from the Namibian or from Namibian Sun, who was it? So we get to the bottom of it. Now it's hanging in the air, you know. And these are the things that the president's been throwing around. That you have these people who are not elected, they proclaim themselves as champions of the people, and they are just harassing me and my family and my government.
Okay, Doc, please.
Yeah, no, I think the colleague is being very simplistic in his assumptions, in his arguments. When you look at the level of transparency and access to meetings of the president, and the commitment also of President Geingob to respond to questions, however difficult, however silly they may be, has been total. And also when you look at just go and do research on the number of press releases that has been shared under the Geingob presidency compared to any other presidency, just for ease of reference, you would notice that there has been a significant flow of information from the Geingob presidency. And I think, had you not been simplistic also, I would not have referred you to where we sit on the rankings. It's a function of the relationship that exists between the government and the press. I think the problem with the press at times, and not everybody, some colleagues in the press, is that they don't want to be held accountable. They don't want to be responsible. You spoke about it's a big responsibility, but when you have a big responsibility, you must be accountable. And when you fail, you must also allow others to point out those failures. I think it was in 2002 or 2000 when the then Minister of Information and Broadcasting at the time, Idipo Mutenya, he was asked about what is the link between the media and government. I think he said something like, no, well, it's healthy, but there is creative tension. And that's normal in a democracy. Because as I said, the press is not perfect. When you don't live up to your own self-regulatory code of ethics and conduct, someone must call you out. And I can assure you that if that does not happen, if I see a problem, if I see a challenge, if I see that the president was quoted out of context deliberately or certain things were omitted, I will raise it. It's uncomfortable, I know, for some in the media, because especially when you are used to getting away with murder. So I will raise it. We will raise it. So it's part of that healthy and creative tension that should exist between the media and specifically the presidency, which I represent. So I think that must be very clear. It's not just going to be carte blanche for you, and you say whatever you want to say, you publish falsehoods, and we keep quiet. We'll call them out. And I know that at times, when you are used to operating in a certain way, it unsettles you. But that's why there's improvement. It's because people become unsettled, they become cautious. I'm sure you have read your own code of ethics and conduct. You know what it says about news gathering and reporting. You know that. And I can assure you there are about 13 points just on that aspect. And when you look at them carefully, a number of times, maybe 10 of those are not adhered to. So we need to go back to the drawing board.
So let me ask you this, Dr. Hengari. So the accessibility of the media to your office is one thing. The cordial nature of that access is another. And Tileni here seems to suggest that he says, for example, that we access your office through your invites. You invite us, but where the media has initiated that communication to say, Doc, we are seeking communication, we're seeking confirmation and clarity on this matter, somehow you are not as accessible as you are when you are the one initiating that kind of communication. But the question to you really, Doc, here is the cordial nature. Why is it that there's friction? Even your own pronouncements, when you hit back to the media, it's not, it's very frosty. Why?
But I think when the media or some in the press don't respect their own self-regulatory code of conduct and ethics, and when there are untruths and lies peddled about the president, I don't think that you would expect us to give you the other cheek. As the presidency, we will engage in a manner that is robust. And it's normal. I don't understand why the press in this country expects to be treated with kids' gloves when they do certain things that are not right. I just don't get it. I don't understand that. So our relationship must be professional, right? But within that professionalism, there's nothing wrong with a robust engagement. Now, since maybe some feel that they can be harmful towards others and others must not respond, I think that's where the challenge is, because I think when you go back once again to the code of ethics, it talks about a journalism that must not be harmful towards others.
Yes.
It talks about a journalism that is truthful, that verifies facts. It talks about a journalism that is cautious and careful in the manner in which it presents news. When the president when a headline is presented, it also talks about those issues, about headlines that must reflect as far as possible, you know, the reality. But we have sensational headlines where the objective is clearly to try and present a newsmaker in a bad light, because there are people who don't read. They just check the headline and see the person is presented in a bad light. President Geingob blames colonialism, you know, without any context. And I'm glad that some of your colleagues, I think it was the Secretary General of the Editors Forum of Namibia, she issued a statement by way of a voice note where she says, we agree with the presidency that news must be presented in context. Statements of the president should be quoted correctly and in context. She says that. She says that she agrees with us. And had we not raised that issue last week, I think that specific issue by now would have been a moot point. So we need to be clear on some of these things. Don't expect docility on the part of the presidency. If maybe that's what you prefer, then clearly you have the wrong candidate.
I hear you.
So
before we go for a break,
my response to this is very simplistic, as Doctor is saying that. You see, the problem with the politicians in Namibia or the political officers is that they want to preside, they want the perks and the glamour that comes with their office and their titles, but they don't want to deal with the unpleasant part of it.
The scrutiny and everything.
And the scrutiny. Now, one of it is, I'll give you, since we're talking about trivialities and simplicities and so on. But the core, the very essence of journalism is that we need to ask difficult questions, and we need to do this. And when I hear something, this is one thing that politicians think, because Dr. Hengari is also guilty of it, always insinuate. He's talking about us making insinuations all the time and innuendo, but he's also always insinuating that there's an agenda from the media. He never elaborates on this agenda, who's behind it and why and what. So there's always this insinuation that, okay, yeah, no, you guys are out to target us. But then sometimes we are asking questions because we need clarity. And we don't dream up information, unfortunately. It comes from the society, and what is in the headlines mirrors the society. So when the president cannot explain that he met President Ramaphosa's aide, and he can't even admit to it, he can't explain why, while we are getting statements, sworn statements from the foreign country saying, well, we were at State House, we were accommodated in Namibia State House, we met the president. So then the presidency doesn't want to answer those questions. And then it becomes the media's fault, it's the journalist's fault. And then another thing is, we're talking about the cordial relationships. Yes, it's true that it's a give and take. Now, when the presidency sees it fit to announce, give us statements via WhatsApp, but we may not, lo and behold, send the presidency questions via WhatsApp, and you follow up a week later because your answers were not, you'll be told, no, send an email. Now, I'm saying, if the office is using WhatsApp as a tool of communication, why can't we also just use it as a tool of communication, because it's easier? So these are the trivialities and technicalities that are always being brought about, you know. No, we didn't answer you. And the truth is also that, like our code of ethics says, that we have to give timeous opportunities for people to respond.
Which you don't most of the time.
And we give. And I can give you ample examples. My experience dealing with the presidency, where you send questions and they're not answered after a month or a week, and then we follow up and then you are told, no, send an email, or no, you know. So I'm not saying that the questions must be answered the way we want them answered, but I feel that there's a responsibility. In fact, for somebody holding the office of the presidency, there's an obligation to respond to questions, especially when they are dealing with matters that we consider matters of national interest or national concern.
Okay, we go for a quick break and then return. Dr. Hengari, I'm sure, would want to respond to that.
Africa Good Morning is a current affairs program that brings you the latest from Southern Africa and beyond. News, economics, sport, weather, interviews, and so much more. For any advertising or news-related queries, contact AGM at synergy.com.na. Africa Good Morning, bringing Africa to you.
AgriMonitor is jou weeklikse landboukundige program wat jou die jongste nuus in die landbouverwante bedryf en onderwerpe wat daaraan gekoppel is bring. Vir enige advertensie of nuusverwante navraag, kontak agrimonitor@synergy.com.na.
We continue our conversation with Dr. Hengari and Tileni Mongudhi. Now, Doctor, you spoke earlier about Reporters Without Borders being that authoritative source of media freedom statistics. Mm-hmm. And in 2021, World Press Freedom, the 2021 World Press Freedom Index cited you as having launched verbal attacks on journalists. I think you were subjected to questions by the local media to comment on that, and you said at the time that it is simply a question of journalists not wanting to be held accountable. Do you think that, because it is very, very possible that you have made history by being the first press secretary in the presidency to be quoted in this report as having launched attacks on journalism? And we don't know whether that contributes to how our position now is fluctuating. Your response?
No, I think, in that very same year, in Africa, we were #1 in that very same year. And when you look at our position since then, even when you look at our points, you would see that we improved on our points. This year, we are number 18 globally, as I've mentioned. And we moved from the position of 24 to 18. So there has been improvements in when it comes to press freedom. And in all honesty, it's not only a function of what you journalists do. Most importantly, it's what we in government do to ensure that you can report as journalists in a climate that is free, that is conducive.
Yes.
And I think just to touch briefly on what my friend here inaccurately raised, when you look at the presidency, I can assure you over 90% of the time we'll respond to your queries. If we don't respond, it's also a response. It's no comment. You as a journalist, you ought to know that. You ought to know that.
We are going to fill the void.
So
we are going to fill the void.
It's a principle of journalism that you must also accept. But on the question of transparency, accountability, I think that charge, if you want to charge us to say we don't live by that ethos, that will be a blatant untruth. I don't want to say a lie, but it's untrue. Let me just give you an example. I think it was 2 years ago. We were hosting, the president was hosting a senior official from the European Union. And he was sitting in the meeting and he was waiting for journalists to leave. You could see that this guy is waiting for journalists to leave. And the president allows the journalists to remain in most of the meetings unless the guest or visitor says, no, I want this meeting to be private, His Excellency. I don't want the media to be present. And he said, but I've never seen stuff like this. Even in Europe, I don't see the media having this type of access to a head of state. And it's the truth.
So when around the same time when Eddie Mumbu from Nampa asked the president, I can't recall what his question was.
It was about the Erindi investment and certain gentleman from Mexico.
Yeah.
And where the president said it's none of your business. Now, you see, those are the questions that we say. You can't tell me that you are transparent, you are welcoming the media, you are giving us access. But in the same vein, you are either trivializing the media, you are vilifying them.
Or censoring.
Yeah, well, censoring not so much, because
in the case of Eddie,
yeah, you can't dictate, generally apart from NBC, the presidency can't dictate to media houses in Namibia, apart from the bullying that we hear is happening at NBC, where we hear the presidency is directly involved in insisting on what must be aired and not.
No, that's your own fiction.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
But you can live in it.
My good friend can respond on that.
Yeah,
but the other issue for me is, the serious thing is, you can't tell us that you are giving us access, but very important, pertinent questions you are failing to answer. Yes, you're saying no comment, but then if you are saying no comment, then you should also not come back and then vilify and demonize our reports, because we gave you the opportunity, you didn't respond. And when you come back, you want to say, well, there's innuendo, there's an agenda behind the scenes, which then for me smacks of a government that is trying to blame its failure on governance with the media, because we are just highlighting those failures of governance and we are not creating them. And if we are honest, the government should accept that the people on the ground are not happy. And that also speaks to, I think you tweeted with one of my colleagues saying that we are self-appointed and we are always attacking the president. Where is the science? Where is the
yeah, no, it's a fair question.
Yeah, I understand. But then if you look at the president's showing, 2014 elections.
You are talking like a politician,
no,
not a journalist. And that's what I caution against. We want journalists and not politicians.
No, we are
if you want to be a politician, partisan, you must declare.
No. We are just asking questions.
Some of the things that we see, that we observe, we see opinions of journalists that are presented as reports. And we have a problem with that. You know that as a journalist, that there's a difference between a comment and a report. There's a difference between an editorial and a news report. You know that very well. Unfortunately, as a critical reader, I can see bias and I can see opinions of a person in a report. Now, when we call that out, you have a problem. We provide you with elaborate answers. What do you do? Because you've already written the report. You've already, your bias in as far as the issue is concerned is already evident. So the answers that are provided to you, you just ignore them. You take maybe one sentence. One sentence, basically more to say, well, we contacted the presidency and the answer is reflected there. But generally speaking, the report is a clear reflection of your own personal bias and not to present the facts. We have a problem with that, and we shall not keep quiet about that.
So it's okay so what you are advocating for is the media should not highlight these lapses in governance in government.
No, nobody is saying that.
Hold government accountable.
No one is saying that.
Because you are saying the moment we write something, and I'm
speaking to an issue that is quite specific in as far as some of the journalism is concerned. Okay. And I'm not the only one to warn against some of these things. I think it was last year, the media specialist at the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung in South Africa, he warned clearly against the danger of opinion journalism. And that's what we are cautioning against. Namibians must be presented with facts, they must be presented with truth, and they must make up their minds on that basis. They should not make up their minds on the basis of the opinion of Tileni, which is couched as a report.
Let me ask you this, Doctor. I mean, my very first question to you was on your perception of the media. And part of what I was trying to get out of you was whether you think that you genuinely think that there is an agenda within the media space against President Hage Geingob.
See, I cannot, I think at times we become victims of our own success. And President Geingob has been very open with the media, with journalists, and with Namibians, broadly speaking. Highly accessible as a leader. And it's not something that many would want to talk about or to write about. You will not see so-called investigative reports about the president participating in leading 14 town hall meetings in 2016 and 14 town hall meetings in 2019. You will not see, stories developed around some of those issues because apparently they are positive. So we don't talk, in this country, we should not talk about the positive aspects. We need headlines that are sensational. Apparently that's what sells. That's what we hear. Everybody wants to become a tabloid, So apparently that's what sells. That's what Namibians want. I'm not convinced about that. There is a lot of room for constructive news, for positive news about the actions of the president, about the actions of government, about our country, society at large. So we also need to bring those out. The type of journalism that worries me is one that ignores progress in society. And that's why I'm worried about when a journalist talks about hatred of Namibians for the head of state. A journalist talks like that. I get worried. Now, when that person in a newsroom is a dangerous journalist, is a politician. And that's what we are cautioning against. We need to remain journalists. If you are a professional journalist, you need to remain that. You need to present facts.
Is it not a fact that the president has, even on social media and in society at large, the president has been under attack, and by members of society. And when a journalist is talking about it, it obviously comes from
loud voices. Now look at that barometer, how dangerous that is.
Okay.
From a senior journalist, look at that barometer, how dangerous that is.
It's not dangerous.
To say apparently the president is hated because people on social media, with fake accounts as well. It might even be you.
Okay, fine, fair enough. Now I'm saying, you are saying now it's a dangerous barometer.
Yes,
but now let me bring it to you that the society, the constitution,
an elected leader by Namibians, sovereigns, then it means that you don't even believe in democracy. So you don't even believe what it means when Namibians express themselves freely to say that President Geingob is the best amongst us. He's the one who's going to lead us for 5 years. That's the barometer that you must use about a popularly elected president, not any other barometer where you say you pick up a few things on social media.
I wanted to bring that up, and you said I'm a politician. Now I'm saying, in 2014, President Geingob got 87% of the vote.
Yes.
2019.
57.
57. Okay. Now the 30% that he lost, where do you think that vote went to? Isn't that sentiment? I'm asking. Isn't that sentiment of the electorate saying we are unhappy with something, even if it's 30%? And this is where democracy comes, and when people in power or governments want to spin this. Democracy, just because it means ruling by the majority and just because the president was popularly elected, does not mean that you must ignore the voices of the minority. Even if you are saying it's Tileni Mongudhi, the constitution still allows me to have a voice. And if a journalist comes and takes Tileni's voice, even if he's a dissident or the only one in the whole country who feels something wrong about the presidency, Tileni also should get a voice. and his concerns must be aired, because when you are trying to just and that's the censorship that Toivo is talking about, because you are trying to oppress a voice. Even if it's the minority, you are trying to oppress a voice or a viewpoint.
No, I think there's a mistake that you are making, a fundamental one here, about what it means to be elected. Yesterday, the highest court in Kenya validated the victory of William Ruto. I think he won by 51%. Yes. President Geingob, in the last election, had 57% of the vote. It's 3 years down the line. Where we are now, what is the assumption once a president is elected? He's elected by Namibians. That's the assumption. Yes. And that's the assumption that you must work with, that this is the popularly elected president by the Namibian people. In our system, I mean, you can look at other systems where presidents are elected through, the parliament. Ours, it's sovereigns. It's a direct election, universal suffrage. So it means a whole lot. When it's
but does it insulate
50 plus?
Does it insulate the president then? Because Doctor, you in many of your statements, and what I find also very, very cheeky of you is that you keep using the 2014 result. No. Even in your latest, a week ago in your statements, you spoke about 87%. That 87% is gone, Chief. People gave the president 57% only, meaning he lost, meaning that 43% of the people in this country do not believe in his leadership. Now, how do we just say that because he was elected, even if he was elected 100%?
Not only that.
It doesn't give him the...
Sorry, can I get to that? Why is the president elected? The president is elected because the populace, the masses feel this is the person who can deliver, who can address our issues. Now, Doctor is talking about town hall meetings that were and they were published and they were written about. And they were positive, that people felt, and we did write about them positively, that the people felt the president came to their doorstep to hear their concerns. But if we go back now, why we are publishing is because people are coming back and saying, well, in 2014, we felt healthcare was an issue. Today, 2022, healthcare is still an issue. In 2014, education was an issue. Today, it's still an issue. Sanitation. So when we are bringing about those failures, it's actually an unfulfilled or broken promise from the government or the ruling party or the president who's leading it. Now, when we are bringing about this issue that there is unfulfilled promises or broken promises, that's when we are attacked. That you just want to focus on the negative. We just want to attack the president.
That is not our, I think also as a senior journalist, and the two of you were senior journalists in the profession, you have the benefit of history and insight, and I'm sure also analytically you are very advanced in terms of understanding the nature of a presidency, understanding the nature of the challenges facing Namibia. And when you look at the Geingob presidency from 2015, you would agree with me that President Geingob faced unprecedented crises during his presidency. And that should be also your analysis. 100%. And I think when you talk about the 57%, that should also be your analysis. That should be the education that you share with Namibians. It's important to provide the context in which a result is achieved. Now here you are sitting here, the two of you, avoiding that context. We understand very well that COVID-19, for example, droughts, the commodity crisis, these are peculiar incidences that impacted the ability of the Geingob presidency to deliver on certain things. But notwithstanding those challenges, this country is still standing. I don't want to imagine this country, what would have been if we didn't have the leadership of President Geingob over the past 8 years and the number of challenges, major challenges that we face. I think it's also a point of interrogation for all of us as citizens, and importantly, for you as journalists who sit with editors, you opine, you say things, but also your reports. It's important to highlight and to talk about some of these things in a manner that is non-partisan, in a manner that don't make you appear like a politician on the front page.
Politician. Okay, we go for another break and then return for the last part of this exciting engagement.
NMH at 1 brings you news from all across Namibia. If you would like to feature your brand or campaign on this platform, contact nmh1@synergy.com.na. NMH at 1, your lunchtime news companion. Sunset News is a daily news show focusing on national headlines as well as international news. If you'd like to feature your brand or campaign on this platform, please contact sunset@synergy.com.na. Sunset News. Don't end your day without us.
We continue the conversation. Now, Doc, let's touch in this last part of the show on some of the pronouncements that you've made in the past couple of days. You issued a statement, you wrote quite an extensive opinion piece that appeared in various newspapers here. In reference to what we have written at Namibian Sun, you spoke about the call by Hadino Ishongwa that the president must honor some sort of tradition that exists in Swapo to just elevate, or maybe not elevate, but endorse the candidacy of the incumbent vice president of the party, Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah. And you are saying that where was he when all these things were happening? But when President Hage Geingob was the vice president, he was endorsed. Why is he not doing the same now? So he contested, but he was endorsed by the sitting president.
No, I think the key aspect, which is a fair point that we ask in our press release, is where the gentleman was when President Geingob was contested, notwithstanding the endorsement. An endorsement by a president is very important. We do accept that. But we also accept the fact that there are those who went fully against the guided democracy that some believed in and continue to believe in. Democracy is not just about elections. We need to understand that. It becomes democracy is also about consensus. It's very important to reach consensus. Now, in the environment where you don't have consensus, it becomes also challenging for an endorsement. Yeah. It becomes a moot point. It could also become even more divisive, especially when it comes from the head of state. So the president has made his position very clear on that issue, that he won't endorse anybody for the position of vice president because he is the custodian of the unity of the party. And in a case where you have candidates and the president chooses a side, you are likely to run into serious difficulty. So that's the position of President Geingob. And it's a fair question to ask when, at a time when he was endorsed and others chose to challenge him, those voices of reason now, they were quiet. And they should have spoken to say, wait a minute, we have a vice president who is endorsed by an important moral authority in the person of the president of the party. So we need to rally behind that person. So that didn't happen. And it's where we are
causing a pushback.
Where we are, where in a situation where the president, as the head of the family, would have to ensure the unity of the family and not picking one side over another. I think in your editorial you also raised that point quite eloquently, even though it has its own limitations in the manner in which you raised it. But you know, it was important to raise it.
When we get into that conversation, I just want to ask you a question. I mean, the president's decision, has that not caused pushback? Because we've reported that there has been a strenuous relationship, or the relationship is not as cordial anymore with his, well, it's at government, it's his deputy prime minister and foreign affairs minister, and the party is his vice president. I mean, the refusal or the decision, let me not say refusal, the decision not to publicly endorse his vice president, has that not caused him problems? And that's where we've been writing about that.
No, your report is unfounded on those aspects. And again, anonymous sources, but then again, your own code of ethics and conduct, it warns you against the use of those anonymous sources, but you continue to use them. So you are going against your own code of ethics and conduct. President Geingob enjoys a healthy relationship with the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of International Relations and Cooperation. They consult each other, they talk to each other on issues within the province of the Deputy Prime Minister as Minister of International Relations and Cooperation. And also the lie that was told about the Deputy Prime Minister being excluded from external missions. And again, without any evidence, I would have expected
the evidence is there, though.
No, I would have expected you to
the evidence is there.
To look at the missions and tell us, no, she was excluded from this one, from that one.
We've listed those.
But what you also need to know is that the Deputy Prime Minister, and especially in that role as Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, she has many missions of her own. In some instances, she would participate. She was the Deputy Prime Minister was with the President in Kigali.
One of those rare moments where they share trips.
And she was with the President in which other country? Just recently.
But if you
and nobody, you didn't signal that, oh, wait a minute.
If you go
supposed to join the President for Jamaica, Cuba, and so on. So some of these things are inventions.
If you go back in history.
So let's also be very careful not to create unnecessary sensational stuff. Let's stick to the facts.
But if you go back in history, and that's part of where we might have picked up that something might not be right. Because most of the foreign relations or foreign affairs ministers in the past have often almost been at almost every trip or engagement that the president is, especially outside, because that person, whoever is manning or having that or holding that office, is actually often the link between the president and the outside world, and that's where we observe that, well, is this normal? Is it not? And then that's when the information starts trickling in that no, but actually there appears to be a strenuous relationship.
But Tileni, we have the privilege of attending a number of summits and high-level meetings where you have heads of state. Foreign ministers are not always there.
Okay.
So it's not a standard procedure.
Okay.
So just go and do your research.
Let me ask you a question.
And you will arrive at that very same conclusion. Just go and do it.
Yeah, let me ask you a question. Tileni, I'm not sure in whether in the edition of the Namibian this week on Tuesday, there is I don't know whether you are one of the co-authors, in which it is suggested, the headline actually says, the president is backing the group that is pushing the current prime minister into the position of vice president. If you can,
Today's
yes,
paper,
yeah. Okay.
Well. You see, this is the thing. We and I'm not afraid of saying it because we've been hearing it and we've been writing about it, that we understood that the president did not see it fit to endorse his vice president, mainly or because he does not want her to advance. Now, with that, a week ago or so, we also wrote an article that states that there's a breakdown in the relationship between the president of the party and his secretary general. Now, if you look at it, we are hearing that the secretary general and the vice president are in one slate or camp, whatever you want to call it, and they have a constituency that's supporting them. In the other constituency is now the camp or the leaders that are sort of aligned, seen as aligned to the president. And therefore, when we are highlighting these things, that could be the reason why the president is refusing to endorse his vice president and opting to go for his current prime minister. Now, my good friend here would accuse us of dreaming this up, and we are using anonymous sources, but unfortunately, this is the discourse we are picking up.
You are presenting rumors as facts.
And we are any good journalist worth their salt would be a fool to ignore information that's on the ground, that's being repeated, especially when it's persistent.
The president has pronounced himself on the issue.
Publicly,
that he will not endorse a specific candidate.
But yet again,
now,
those are
why are you still interested in the rumors?
But it's politics 101, Dr. Hengari, that there's a lot of public relations in politics, especially at the level of a president. And there is always pronouncements that are made public to present a particular picture. But if you look at how these things are shaping up, we saw the endorsements, the nominations at the Politburo meeting this week.
Behind the scenes.
The way they came out speaks exactly 100% to what the media has been speculating. How could that just be a coincidence?
Well, I think you want me to, as press secretary, to dive into Swapo party politics, which is not really my space. You may want to speak to the Secretary General, the Vice President of the party in those capacities. But what I need to emphasize is the fact that President Geingob has publicly stated that the question of him endorsing anybody for the position that leads to a presidential candidate of the Swapo party is now moot because of the evolution. And I think he provides some very sound arguments which deserve to be pulled out by journalists and to be interrogated. The evolution of the party over the past 10 years is such that such endorsements are becoming moot. Because you, at that level, when you endorse on the basis of a consensus, on the basis of a clear understanding, a meeting of minds amongst comrades, and not to endorse in a manner that leads to divisions. I think the President Geingob, is a man of unity. You also know that very well, that in 2017, a sitting head of state with a score of 2014 was contested for the party presidency at a congress. And I didn't see you writing articles, newspaper reports saying this is a scandal.
It's not a scandal.
It's a scandal.
It's a democratic process.
A head of state elected by 87% of the population, a Soviet score, is now sitting in a congress subjected to a contest for the presidency of the party.
But
You,
It's allowed.
okay, let me ask, no,
It's
what
very much allowed.
does this not have to do with horse trading, or what we call it horse trading? Because if you look at it, President Geingob in 2017 openly endorsed his current vice president and the secretary general, and he said, these are the people I feel I can work with. So what changed? And you are saying that the evolution of the party, but I mean, the system is still there.
President Geingob was a candidate for the presidency of the Swapo party at the time.
Yes, but he
And
also
I think
endorsed.
you must also accept the fact that currently his own comrades in the party have said the president of the Swapo party will not be contested. I think it's a reflection of the leadership, inclusive leadership that the president has been able to provide between 2017 and now.
The position has become redundant, Chief. You know this.
No, it's not.
It's being president of the party now is no longer what is the most important one. The most important one is vice
Well, I
president.
think, in 20...
So you might as well endorse him.
No, you see, that's...
Nothing to lose.
Now, you see, that's the bias I'm talking about.
But my good brothers, it was a pleasure having both of you on the show. Doc, thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Tileni.
Tileni.
Yeah, that was tonight's agenda. I hope you enjoyed it. I did. Thank you for watching.
All right.
The Evening Review is a daily interview-based talk show that dissects and expounds on current affairs as they occur in Namibia. The show aims at reaching Namibians of all age groups who seek better understanding of the state of current affairs in the country. This show is broadcasted on NTV, 1up2.com, and cross-shared on the following Facebook platforms: Namibian Sun and Namibia Media Holdings. The Evening Review focuses on interviews, latest news, and up-to-the-minute current events. Contact evening@synergy.com.na. Evening Review, unpacking today's pertinent issues.